Think that initially, kind of the responsibility was on the coaching staff to kind of lead them through, that adversity, and then, once they got their feet back underneath them, they were able to clearly, make a decision, and the decision that they made is, we're going to work every single day with purpose to make sure that we turn the tragedy into a triumph.
Play football again is a blessing. Being that with the tragedy we had, it made you really reflect and think that any day could be your last day. So I feel like the whole team in general is just really falling in love and just taking it every day, day by one, and just really having fun with it, because you never know when your last snap going to be. So I feel like just that mentality the whole spring is just what's been driving us every game, every day, to just be the best version of ourselves.
It was really tough when we went through that, but the greatest thing about it was we came together as a team. And, a lot of us were sad, a lot of us were down, but we rallied together, and it felt great to have your brothers next to you the whole time. So I really just think that it brought us closer as a team, and we're more focused on playing for Lavelle, Devin, and Deshaun.
There were certainly a lot of emotions at Scott Stadium for the first game for Virginia in front of fans since those tragic events in November. Hi, I'm Jacquie Franciulli for the Good Old Podcast and Wahoo's 24/7. And as you can see, I'm joined by Greg Madia from the Daily Progress. And we're here to talk about spring football. Greg, we're going to talk actual football here, but we can't start talking about the spring game without addressing the emotions behind this game. You saw and immediately when these players arrived on Scott Stadium and just walking and seeing that end zone written with UVA Strong, Lavelle Davis, Devin Chandler, Deshaun Perry, emotions were high for these young men.
Yeah, no doubt, Jackie, and thanks for having me. And I think, for everything the program had been through, Saturday was just such a feel good day because they were back in front of their fans, back together playing, and it took them time to get to that point where they could enjoy, have fun, remember, and also play for their former fallen teammates. So it was a really good overall day for the program to be back and have that moment, have that triumph back, as Tony Elliott often says. And of course the highlight was Mike Hollins scoring a touchdown. And then going to place the ball on Deshaun Perry's name, which was painted in the back of the end zone on the back line. Just a really, really nice moment, nice tribute, and heartfelt, right? It's taken a lot for this program to come back and to get to a point where it could have a celebration and an honoring while also playing a game.
Yeah, Coach Elliott at the end of the game was saying they wanted to turn tragedy into triumph for Virginia football. And I think their main focus is they're not moving on. They continue to move forward. And even before the game, we saw Deshaun Perry's family on the field with Will Bettridge in the end zone. We saw them with Mike Collins. Obviously, Mike Collins is very close with Deshaun Perry's family, like Will Bettridge. So it was a chance for these men to play for those three angels, as they call them, whenever they say they want to keep their flame lit. So obviously, this was an important moment for them. I think anyone who was there watching, or even on the broadcast, when Mike Collins scored that touchdown, when he even had the first carry of the game, which was great to see, getting a standing ovation after all the hard work and all the recovery that he is doing, both mentally and physically. But then seeing his younger brother behind him, where Tony Elliott grabbed him and seeing the scoring the touchdowns, this is the first milestone that we're seeing from them. The first game in Scott Stadium. And Greg, we're going to see a lot of these milestones for these players as they approach the season.
No doubt, right? The Tennessee game, when they open things up in Nashville, will be the first game back. And then the week after against James Madison will be the first, game at Scott Stadium. Not spring game, but first game at Scott Stadium. So each time something like that occurs, the emotions and the memories will resurface for the team, and they'll have to deal with that. And I think one thing you probably learned, just like I did this spring, is how much tighter the team is together because of what they went through, right? There's an appreciation, and I heard the word gratitude a lot this spring from different coaches, different players, and what it means to them to be able to play after going through what they had to endure and losing teammates and not being guaranteed, right, to wake up every day, right? That's what a few players even said this past Saturday. I think it was J.R. Wilson, the wide receiver, said, everybody understood that nothing's guaranteed anymore. So there's been an appreciation to be back out on the practice field, and for as monotonous as spring ball can get, right? By practice 9, 10, 11, it's like, all right, get on with it most years. This team did not have that mentality at all. They pushed through, and we're really excited to be back playing football and doing things, doing some of the things they like to do. Elliott had said, that the field is the one place where things can kind of become normal again, right? Even though they're without Davis, Chandler, and Perry. For the players, it's the chance to do what they're at UVA to do. In addition to go to school, it's play football, and that can be their escape a little bit. And you've seen that appreciation throughout the spring.
Yeah, for sure. And you saw their smiles out there, and you just saw a team that was more, like you said, unified. The team, Des Kitchen said there's more investment out there from their players. There's more buy-in. I think these are all the phrases that we've been hearing a lot from players, from coaches. So, and a lot of them said, like you said, their appreciation that they get to play this game of football that it's not guaranteed for them. So they showed it out there, and it was kind of like what Tony Ellis said. It was turning a triumph. They're showing joy out there. I think one thing that kind of shows this more often than not is J.R. Wilson, after he scored a touchdown in the same end zone as UVA Strong was written and those 3 names were there, he did a snow angel. It was that, I feel like if you had a picture that summed it up, is having a picture of J.R. Wilson doing a snow angel on UVA Strong. That would be the epitome of turning tragedy into triumph. But we're going to move on to football. But before we do, we're going to take a quick break. And on the way back, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks, because that's what a lot of people are talking about this morning. Also, we're talking about the offense, which group seems to have a lot of competition, and of course, who of the young players stood out. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. That's Greg Madia from the Daily Progress. And we're talking about the Virginia spring game. And we're moving on to the football side of things. And obviously, the big talking point is the guys under center. So we were expecting to see a lot of Tony Muskett, and we did. He went 11 of 14 for 149 yards and 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 4 carries and 28 yards. And I think we were expecting this a little bit from what we saw in the spring practices and what we've been hearing, but Anthony Colandrea didn't act like he was a freshman out there. He had 1 touchdown. He was 18 for, I'm trying to read this handwriting. I think it looks like it's 18 for 20. 18 for 29?
18 for 29 is what I wrote in my story the other day. So I hope it was
18 for 29 and 1 pick 6 at the end when he was trying to get that tie game, and then 1 touchdown. So these quarterbacks showed a lot for us on Saturday. We saw an offense that seemed to be more cohesive compared to last spring under the first year of Tony Elliott, where all of them was kind of chill adjusting to the scheme. What was your impression of Tony Muskett and Anthony Colandrea, Greg?
Yeah, I think I'll start with Muskett, the Monmouth transfer. What stood out to me was right away Des Kitchings wanted him to throw the football. 4 straight throws to start the game for Muskett. And, of course, the 4th one was the long 63-yard touchdown to J.R. Wilson. And I think what stood out to me was, that's a big play. Didn't see that a whole lot last year from Virginia's offense, right, Jacquie? It was a quick strike, big play. Wilson made a great play on the ball with 2-handed catch and then shrugged off Tavon Kyle to get in the end zone. But for me, that's a good sight if you're a Virginia fan. You hadn't seen that last year all that much. Their longest pass play last year was 64 yards, and it was on a throw out to Mike Hollins that he turned into a long play against Miami. Other than that, you really didn't see the long touchdown pass, and that's something Virginia's hoping to do more of this year. And I think Muskett has the history, the track record to maybe help Virginia improve in that department, assuming they can get the protection. I thought the protection was pretty good in front of Muskett on Saturday, especially as he unleashed that deep ball off play action. But Musket, last couple of years at Monmouth has thrown a lot of those deep touchdown passes. I was looking it up, and it was 8 last year, 8 touchdowns of 20 or more yards. The year before, 8 touchdowns of 20 or more yards. So it's something he's done consistently throughout his career. And for Virginia, probably happy to see it right out of the gate. And then with Calandria, the freshman, just impressive. Not to be timid, not to be shy. And Jacquie, we heard all spring about this Florida swagger, right? What is what Tony Elliott and Taylor Lamb, a couple of the other coaches had said about Calandria. And he looked good. I thought he was sharp. He didn't have the long touchdown pass like Musket did, but consistent chemistry with what Malachi Fields, Jaden Gibson, another young player. So impressive debut there for Calandria too.
Yeah, he had a lot of moxie. That's what Taylor Lamb said, and we got to see it.
Yeah.
And Musket did show his cannon of an arm, which he's appropriately named for. What Calandria saw, he was also being able to sustain drives. We saw Virginia stay on the field a little bit longer, which obviously will help the defense in the long term as well, because they won't be as gassed on the field. So we were able to see that. We were able to see him really extend drives with his legs. And kind of evade pressure. And we saw Tony Musket being able to command the offense pretty good for a newcomer. From it looks like he's very at ease in the playbook. We asked him after the game. He seems to be pretty comfortable with what is expected from him and the playbook and his chemistry with the team. And it was showing. It was definitely an offense that was more cohesive. It's hard to evaluate a lot with the O-line, although we did think it was a little bit better at pass protection, but because the quarterbacks aren't really live and the D-line didn't have their first starters out there, a lot of them were gone. But from just a little bit that we saw, we saw more than 5 healthy offensive linemen out there in the spring game, which we didn't see last year. And we also saw that there you can see some cohesiveness on that line. So a lot to like there, as we've seen progress, which is what we wanted to see in the spring game from the offense. On the flip side, what we also saw too was competition. There are certain positions that there's going to be some hefty competition for playing time, and I think you can point to the running back room as a prime example of that. When we looked at the game, obviously Mike Collins got a lot of reps. We saw Paris Jones get reps. We saw Kobe Pace. We saw Cody Brown, and actually Xavier Brown really only touched the ball in the second half in the ground game. So you've got a lot of competition there, and that's not even touching on Ahmad Foston, who is coming back from an injury and didn't participate in the spring, and the 2 freshman running backs that are coming in the summer, Greg. This is a loaded room.
You didn't even mention the star running back from this past Saturday's game, Jack Greasy. So yeah, that running back, he had 2 touchdowns, a 35-yarder, an 8-yarder. I don't know how much he'll factor into the running back competition come fall, but maybe he can appear on special teams for Virginia if the Hoos can get him to play and contribute in that fashion. But as far as the running back room, it's deep, right? And we've known that going into the spring for Virginia is that group is going to have enough talent to make some plays and maybe help Virginia be consistent. What we had heard throughout the spring from coaches was that Kobe Pace maybe added a dynamic they didn't have the last season, and that's a big play threat, has the ability to break the long touchdown run. And I think with those different skill sets Virginia has in the running back room, it'll be a place where probably 3 or 4 of them see regular action. I don't think it's a position group that lends itself to having the feature bell cow running back like you saw a decade ago. I think with the way college football is now, you need multiple running backs, especially with how taxing that position can be. And with Paris Jones's experience, Mike Hollins's inspiration, right? It's clear he's the guy that kind of inspires everybody on that roster right now. You talk about Kobe Pace and the home run ball, and then Xavier Brown, who flashed last year as a freshman, and his ability not only to carry the football but catch it out of the backfield too. I think there are roles there for a number of different backs to see regular action, and it'll play out during August training camp. But right now, I think Virginia has to be happy with its depth at running back, and maybe it can lend itself to a little more success in the run game come this season.
Yeah, and then it'll be interesting to see if Xavier Brown maybe ventures into the slot too. As he is a good pass catcher, so that might be an option there. And so that goes into my next question because although the running backs, there wasn't a lot of questions there, just who might get the ball in the linebacker room and on defense. We had two positions that lost a lot of veterans. Obviously, they were losing two all ACC corners in Fentrell Cypress, Anthony Johnson, but they also lose all ACC leading tackler in Nick Jackson. But Greg, when I looked at that linebacker room, and that's without Josh Ahern being available for the spring game, it was you look at that depth and it's actually very good. James Jackson is obviously a veteran, but then you look at youngsters like Trey McDonald and Stevie Bracy, two second years. Or Trey McDonald redshirted last year. He led the team, the blue team, in tackles with 10, while Stevie Bracy had 8, leading for the white team. When you see those two and what they could bring, I mean, I'm not too worried about that linebacker room.
No, I think with Nick Jackson, your concern in addition to production, right? He did have 3 straight seasons with 100+ tackles, was the leadership. And to be frank, John Rodzinski, defensive coordinator, kind of squashed that uh, fear about losing leadership. He said, there's another Jackson named James, and he's done a really nice job and has shown all the qualities of leadership that you'd expect from an inside linebacker. I don't think that was a slight at Nick Jackson. I just think it's confidence. It's projecting confidence into a linebacker who they're going to need leadership from in James Jackson. As far as talent goes, he's gotten better since last season, more reps, more experience, and I expect he'll probably be a starter, and then they'll get contributions from Bracy, McDonald, and I would think Josh Ahern too coming back when he gets fully healthy and is ready to go in the fall. So I think with those two young linebackers, Bracy, I think he benefited. Right, he's a full year into the program, was here in the spring of 2022. He knows what to do. He knows what's expected of him. McDonald, I think, probably sensed after Nick Jackson left that there'd be some opportunity for him, and he could factor in. And I think he spoke about learning from Nick Jackson and carrying some of those traits into this season. So it's a group I think is going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah, and it's actually I'm really excited to have Trey McDonald back in the press room, Greg. He certainly gave us some nice
Yeah.
quotables about Jameer Carter. Although I'm going to date myself, but I had Sir Mix-a-Lot in my head as soon as he talked about having Jameer Carter's big butt in front of him. He knows no one's going to tackle him. So that was Trey McDonald. If anyone is a listener of the show for a while, he was one of our first guests on the show when we did our new class segment. And him and Stevie Bracy were actually on the same show together. And they're both actually probably the jokesters of the class. So it's funny that they're both in the linebacker room. So excited to see their personality shine this year as well. So, and
I
then
think
at
I think
corner,
too,
that was the other position that we were keeping an eye on. I think there's still a question mark there how the depth is going to go because there was a lot of injuries to that group. So we couldn't really assess like Elijah Gaines or anything, but we did get a sense of what Tavon Kyle would bring, Greg.
Yeah, I think that most fans probably saw him getting beat by J.R. Wilson down the field and then shoved before the touchdown. I think with Tavon Kyle, he's going to have to play, right? At this point, he's their most experienced corner they have on the roster, having played at Iowa State. He did not start in 2022, but has good experience coming over from the Cyclones and is someone that the Cavaliers believe can be a player for them. I still think they need more help than that, right? Will Simpkins had a good spring. He progressed well, but you need more than that after losing two all ACC corners in Fentrell Cypress and Anthony Johnson. I think that's probably the position of concern on defense if you're Virginia right now, right? You need some more talent in that room.
And then my final question, Greg, is because in the spring game, you're always going to see the young talent kind of shine a little bit. You mentioned J.R. Wilson with his touchdown, but also shrugging off Tavon Kyle there for that touchdown. So showing the added strength that he was able to get. We saw Xavier Brown, who played last year, able to go past a tackle that he probably would have gone down to closer to the end zone. But you saw a new newcomers. As we mentioned, Anthony Colandrea, we saw Jaden Gibson, we saw Trey McDonald get more significant reps. When you look at all these young guys stepping up, who would you say either surprised you or do you think kind of pointed to as, I think this is a guy that's going to have significant reps come the fall?
I think it's Jaden Gibson, right? I mean, you look at the receiver position group, Fields and Wilson are probably your two, along with Malik Washington, if you want to count the inside slot. Those are probably your three top receivers. After that, Demeek Starling's in the mix, and who knows, right? But beyond that, and Jaden Gibson would probably be the next guy. So I would think Jaden Gibson, he was Georgia's all-time leading receiver, high school all-time leading receiver, set the state record for touchdowns too. I think he's going to be in the mix. You heard, it was funny, like little bit week after week with Gibson throughout the spring, you started to hear a little bit more, whether it was from the coaches or the quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden you see him on Saturday in a spring game and you're like, wow, all right, he's someone that is benefiting from enrolling early, understands, just gotten to understand the offense at least a little bit, can use the summer to get bigger, stronger, and maybe by August he's in the mix for some reps. So I think he's someone fans should probably be excited about coming off a really, really good spring.
Yeah, and we saw Anthony Colandrea trying to get after Jaden Gibson with a throw, and you're thinking that is the future connection there.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of that in the years to come. So yeah, Jaden is definitely one to watch in the fall, not just at wide receiver, also at special teams too, as a potential returner for Virginia. So I would say if he doesn't get on the field early at wide receiver, he was certainly getting on special teams. So he's definitely a name to know. And I kind of agree with you. He was the one that stood out the most as far as a true young talent. You can talk about Anthony Colandrea, but you would expect Tony Muskett to kind of get that QB1, although Jay Wolfick will probably say otherwise in the fall. But Greg, thank you so much for joining us to kind of break down what we saw in the spring game.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie.
And if you continue to like what you hear, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. We are available on Spotify, Apple, and many other streaming services. We're also on YouTube. So why don't you go ahead and like this channel, like this video, and click on the bell so that you will get notified whenever we have a new video. So with Greg, I'm Jacquie Franciulli, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your week.